365 days in a government shutdown. What happens? So, what would actually happen if the United States government just stopped for good? It's a wild thought, right? We've all seen government shutdowns before. There have been some long ones in U.S. history, with the longest lasting 35 days before things eventually got started again. But they always end. The system, for better or worse, reboots. But what if, one time, it didn't? What if the largest government in the world just shut off permanently? We're going to walk through a thought experiment of what that first year could look like, to see just how fragile the whole system really is. This isn't a prediction, it's a stress test, a what-if scenario based on how interconnected everything has become. The first 24 hours, the great unplugging. So, day one, Congress blows a deadline, no spending bill gets passed, and for whatever reason there are no last-minute deals this time. It's done. At first, things feel deceptively quiet. For most people, the lights are still on, water's running, and you can still doom scroll on the internet. But behind the curtain, the great unplugging has already started. Millions of federal workers get the notice. They're furloughed indefinitely. But here's the thing. Unlike past shutdowns where they were promised back pay, this time there's no guarantee. Their paychecks just stop. Then you have another group, the so-called essential workers. Think air traffic controllers, federal law enforcement, TSA agents. They're ordered to keep working but without pay. How long do you think that's sustainable? The first signs you'd actually see are small. National parks and museums shut their gates, not for a couple of weeks, but for good. Federal websites, from the IRS to the National Weather Service, either go dark or just show a static page. Due to a lapse in appropriations, this website is not being updated. Airports become the first real point of chaos. The U.S. Postal Service is an independent agency funded by its own revenue, so your mail might still show up. But the aviation system? It starts to fray, fast. Air traffic controllers and TSA agents show up, but with zero pay, morale hits rock bottom. Staffing shortages become an immediate crisis, and flight delays start cascading across the country. Air travel doesn't stop completely, not yet, but you're watching its slow-motion collapse begin. For the average person, day one is just a weird news headline, an inconvenience. You'd have no idea it was the last truly normal day you might ever have. The first few weeks, the certainty of chaos. By the end of the first week, that illusion of normalcy completely shatters. And the first people to really feel the pain are, as always, the most vulnerable. Now, programs like Social Security and Medicare are mandatory spending, so technically, those checks keep getting issued. But here's the catch. What if you need to apply for the first time, or you lost your Medicare card and need a replacement? There is literally no one there to answer the phone. The offices are closed. The entire system is just frozen. Then you have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. That's funded annually, so it's basically a ticking time bomb. States get the word that federal funds are about to run out. For the millions of families who rely on that to buy groceries, panic starts to set in. And then the economic shockwaves hit. It's not just the millions of federal workers with no income anymore. It's the hundreds of thousands of government contractors whose invoices are now just worthless pieces of paper. It's the small businesses that were counting on federal loans that have now vanished. The housing market seizes up. The FHA isn't insuring new mortgages, and the IRS isn't around to verify incomes for loan applications. People get spooked. They start pulling cash from ATMs, because who knows how stable the banks are. Now, the FDIC, the agency that insures your deposits, is independently funded. But the real issue becomes a crisis of faith. Can one independent agency truly hold things together if the government that chartered it is gone? That fear alone is enough to start small but steady runs on regional banks. The dominoes are picking up speed. Section 3. 3 months in. The systemic failure. 3 months in, and the country is unrecognizable. This is no longer a political story. It's a full-blown survival crisis. Public health becomes a massive concern. The FDA, with most of its staff gone, can only react to the most extreme emergencies. Routine food safety inspections? They've stopped. The CDC has suspended all of its nationwide disease surveillance. And the National Institutes of Health, the engine of global medical research, it halted all new clinical trials months ago. Thousands of patients in those trials were just sent home, their hope gone. The justice system has ground to a halt. Federal agencies like the FBI are operating with a tiny crew focused only on immediate threats to life. The irony is, by doing that, they create a huge power vacuum. Interstate crime, cybercrime, and organized crime go basically unchecked. And then there's the skeleton of the nation: infrastructure. Without federal highway funds, states can't afford to maintain interstate roads. Potholes become craters. Bridges go uninspected. Traveling between states becomes a gamble. And it gets weirder. Without a unifying federal authority, states start acting like their own little nations. Some governors call up the National Guard, not to handle a disaster, but to protect their own resources and borders. Checkpoints start appearing on highways. The United States is literally becoming a collection of suspicious, walled-off territories. We've just charted the first 3 months, and you can see how terrifyingly fast a functioning society can unravel. Before we look at what the new normal looks like after a full year, take a second and think about how you would have prepared. If you find this thought experiment compelling, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive. 6 months in, the new authorities. By the 6-month mark, the concept of a single, unified America is basically dead. Power has become hyper-localized, and in the absence of federal law, new authorities are filling the void. In some areas, it's a positive thing. You see neighborhoods and towns forming their own councils and mutual aid societies. Retired engineers work to keep the local water treatment plant online. Communities organize their own security patrols. Bartering becomes the main way to trade. Canned goods, fuel, and ammo are the new currencies. But here's the flip side. In many other regions, that power vacuum is filled by more sinister forces. Organized criminal syndicates, once in the shadows, are now operating in the open. They seize control of ports, warehouses, and shipping routes, becoming the de facto government. You start hearing the term warlords, not in a failed state overseas, but in parts of America, where they control territory with private militias. And the US dollar? While not entirely worthless, its universal trust is gone. In many places, it's refused. Its value swings wildly from one region to another. The global impact is catastrophic as the world's reserve currency implodes, triggering a worldwide depression. The tech that holds our world together is failing too. Without federal maintenance, the power grid becomes unstable and balkanized. Rolling blackouts are now permanent in many areas. The internet fractures into a collection of regional networks with huge dead zones in between. Long-distance communication becomes a relic of a lost time. 1 year into shutdown, day 365. And that brings us to day 365. The sun rises on a country that is now just a name. The United States is a mosaic of fortified cities, independent towns, and vast stretches of lawless territory connected by decaying roads. The long-term consequences are now fully baked in. Scientific research has completely halted. Universities, stripped of federal funding, have either downsized into simple trade schools or closed their doors for good. And that whole environmental angle? It's a slow-motion disaster. Without the EPA, toxic waste sites and Superfund sites are unmonitored, just leaching poison into the ground. Air and water quality are in a free-fall, with no agency left to even measure the decline. Life is harder. It's shorter. The average life expectancy has dropped off a cliff because of the collapse of healthcare, the return of old diseases, and constant violence. For most people, life is just the daily struggle. Find clean water, find food, and protect your family in a world without rules. The federal government is a ghost, a story told to children about a time before. The White House is an empty symbol of a lost era. The idea of a shared American identity has been replaced by fierce local loyalty and a deep suspicion of anyone from the outside. So, from the deceptive quiet of day 1 to the fractured chaos of day 365, the collapse wasn't a single event, but a cascade of a million failures. It's a pretty stark demonstration of how deeply our lives are intertwined with the systems and services that a functioning government, for all its flaws, provides. What took centuries to build was taken apart in a single year. The glimmer of hope, if you can call it that, lies in those small pockets of humanity that endured, the communities that reorganized, and the neighbors who helped each other. They're the seeds from which new societies might one day grow. But the final question remains unanswered. Could society ever truly rebuild into a unified nation? Or is this fractured, violent landscape the new, permanent reality? What do you think you would do to survive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to explore more scenarios that challenge our understanding of the world, make sure you're subscribed.